I'm Dana Obleman, creator of the Sleep Sense program, and welcome to Ask a Baby Sleep Expert. Today, joining me is Sara Cuthbert. She is a Sleep Sense consultant, and one of her specialties is dealing with school-age children. So welcome to our chat, Sara.
Thanks, Dana.
And tell us a little bit about your business and where you're from.
Yeah, so I live in Centennial, Colorado, so just near Denver. And I have been doing this work with families for about 8 years. And actually, I worked with Dana. I worked with you in the very beginning with our daughter, who is 17 now. So I've been kind of in this like sleep world for a long time now. So, and
yes,
I have 2 children who are in high school and college, and so I'm not in the world of littles at this point.
Right. Yeah, and one thing that's kind of neat about watching this sort of evolution of your children growing up, and especially when they had a really strong sleep foundation as like little children, as babies and toddlers, sure, they go through the teen years and biology steps in and sleep schedules get pushed a little bit, but I've always thought my children are really good sleepers, like throughout their life cycle. Like they're still, really good sleepers, and that's kind of like, I like to call it the gift that keeps on giving when you teach your child to sleep well.
Do you agree? Completely. And it's interesting because I feel like, both of our children are very good sleepers, even to the point where neither of them have ever really wanted to do sleepovers. They've always said, like, I just prefer to sleep in my own bed. I know I'm going to get a great night's sleep. I mean, they understand the value of it. Their friends now ask me about it. I've actually done some speaking in some of the local high schools around here about sleep hygiene and helping people understand, because it really is, if the skills aren't built early, and we're going to talk about that today, I feel like they don't typically correct themselves. So I think it's an incredible gift to have that early on and to see it last.
Yes, I agree, 100%. That's great. Well, let's dive in. Today our question or our topic is talking about how we help all school-age children sleep well. So let's just talk, like, what are some of the common challenges you see parents facing now with school-age children and sleep?
Yeah, so I would say, we're sort of clarifying about school-age children. I have worked with a number of kids, age 5 to 6, all the way through age 13, sometimes even 14, and I have found this that sleep issues are very prevalent in these kids, but families really have no idea that there is help out there. Outside of going to a truly clinical sleep setting where they're looking at things like sleep apnea, we have a real increased, sleep disordered breathing kind of issues and things like that people are looking at. Also in our neurodiverse population, there are a lot of sleep issues, but, just for like kind of the average kid who isn't sleeping, I think parents don't really realize that things can be changed. So the things that I see primarily are kids that need a parent to lay with them to go to sleep. They wake during the night and they either come to their parents' bed or bedroom, and they're looking for assistance during the night. So they're experiencing fragmented sleep, not sleeping consolidated through the night, because they have that sleep prop association. And I know we'll talk more about that, just like our infants do, right? I also see a lot of behavioral issues in school and attention deficit, things that are really helped when we get sleep on track. And I think a lot of times families and teachers don't really know to look at that piece as a contributing factor. So those are probably the primary things that I see. One more thing is that I see a lot of kids that are going to bed way too late, and they're having a lot of trouble waking in the morning and kind of getting into their day, making it to school on time, causing a lot of stress and chaos in the home because we're not sleeping well when we're meant to be sleeping.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think the first stone that should be looked under when we're looking at a child who's got, maybe some symptoms or signs of attention deficit or some behavioral issues at school or even focus or attention challenges is sleep quality. Like, that's number one. Like, is this child sleeping enough and well? And if not, then let's work on that piece and see, right? We can see. If it doesn't change anything, then we know it's not that. Then we can look on to something else. But that's always step one, in my opinion.
I completely agree. And actually, a lot of families who come to me, that's exactly how we use this work, is how can we even determine what's happening on a neurological level? And there are some really incredible assessments and things that can be done, but how can we even determine what's going on when we know that they're chronically sleep deprived, And,
yes.
And it's not that hard to become sleep deprived, I mean, really, I see, and we talk, I'm sure you have experience of this too, but especially like with my teenagers, just looking at the National Sleep Foundation recommended amounts of sleep and how much sleep kids really need, until they're around 18 years of age, they need that kind of 8 to 10 hours of sleep each night. And I bet if we were looking at a classroom of 6th graders, half of them are not even getting 7, so that's a huge issue.
Absolutely. And so what are some of the factors that are leading to late bedtimes?
Well, I think chaotic schedules. I mean, right?
Yes.
We run ourselves just sort of crazy with all the activities. A lot of activities and sports don't respect, time and time to have a reasonable dinner. We don't want to be eating too close to bedtime, right? But a lot of times things are running really late. I also think that people are working, and so a lot of times if people are in a daycare or an after school program, and let's be realistic, if you pick your child up at 5 o'clock and then you drive home and you make dinner and you need to do the bedtime routine and all the things, we're often running into sometimes like a 9:30 lights out, and that's just it's too late. And you and I know that one of the things that happens when we get into that overtired state and when we have sort of missed the window, like we have noticed with our infants, I mean, we're really keyed in to look for that with our very young children. But as kids get older, we're not necessarily paying as much attention to kind of their energy levels and what's happening. But when they get that kind of second wind energy, which is that later evening energy, they have a much harder time settling. So that's another topic that I work a lot with my kids on, is the topic of laying in bed, not being able to fall asleep. I also think that's related to blue light exposure. The other thing I would say about late bedtime is that we're doing screens late, and a lot of homework is on the screen now, right? So, we are seeing that, but, we know the value of doing a power down hour and really looking at sleep hygiene kind of from that perspective. So we can talk more about that now, or
I would love that. I agree. I think there's scheduling challenges for these kiddos. I think there's too much blue light, like environmental light, that's playing a huge role in their ability to sort of wind down and get ready for sleep to come. What would be your suggestions? People are listening and they're like, "Oh, this kind of sounds exactly like my child." What would be sort of first steps of like getting things on a better track?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it can be pretty overwhelming thinking about changing sort of everything about your life structure in order to support better sleep. I think the first thing, and this is something that I found really interesting working with families in this age group, is that the kids are often fairly motivated to heal these issues because they notice that they don't feel that great. I've had kids that have had headaches at school. They're falling asleep on their desk. They don't like getting in trouble and feeling like they can't concentrate on their work. So I think the first step is actually in having a conversation with your child and really talking about kind of what's happening. Hey, honey, I noticed that in the mornings when I go to wake you up for school, you have a really tough time getting out of bed. It's hard. We have a little bit of stress in the morning. Then we have trouble in the transition, getting to school, getting changed for school. And one of the things that I know that might be impacting that is that you're maybe just not getting to bed soon enough, right? So starting to help them understand ways to help themselves, because these kids really, they have a lot of awareness, and if we kind of guide them in that way. So the first thing I do is really just start to create relationship and trust with the children that I work with, so that they understand that I'm trying to help them help themselves. And if a parent comes at it from that kind of an angle versus you need to do this differently, or you need to do this better kind of thing, I think that conversation is important. I really think it's important to assess the schedule, to look at the week, to get together with your partner if you have one and your kids, and on a Sunday night, and look at the week ahead. Oh, here's a night where it looks like we have a really late practice. So how are we going to organize getting food, realistically healthy food in before practice? Maybe have your clothes set out for the next day. And, when we come home, we'll do an abridged wind down process. But how can I help you after school get the things done that you need to get done, so that then we're ready to kind of get into bed when we get back from practice? Starting just to have a conversation around awareness, I think, is probably where I would start.
Love that. Yeah, I love that. Just like how, because I think especially I remember when my own kids kind of went through that middle school transition, like grade 6-ish area, there's a lot of challenges and a lot of executive function responsibilities that have to happen with these kids, and they're not always up to speed neurologically. So, planning ahead and knowing what things do I have to prepare for tomorrow, and how can I stay on task and on track with my assignments. These are all things that we want to help them with. We don't want to do it for them, but we want to aid them in the process of kind of thinking things through, and also with the motivation being let's make sure that we can get bedtime on track, that you're getting enough sleep, because with enough sleep, these functions become easier as well. So, absolutely. Yeah, I love that idea of getting kids on board. I mean, you're right. Feeling tired is not an enjoyable experience for anyone.
No, and when we're seeing behavioral issues, I think a lot of impulse control issues can sometimes be related to sleep deprivation and things that kids don't really want to feel, right? So we're, hey, I noticed this is your experience, or this is what happened for you at school today. Let's talk about some of the reasons why that might be happening. There also another big piece that I work on with families is fear and anxiety. Especially around sleep, but around the belief that this is something that their body knows how to do and that they know how to do well. And a lot of times the kids that I'm working with have never really learned independent sleep skills. And we know, you and I know, and in our industry we know that independent sleep is a learned skill. It's something just like riding a bike or doing math. We have to be taught how to do it, and we have to practice. And so the kids get very frustrated trying to have this experience of not needing their parents so much, or not, laying in bed awake, just stressing for an hour after the lights are out. But they don't have the tools. So I think it's very important to look at the factors that are kind of built around now this very long-standing habit of not having positive sleep experience. So that fear, really addressing sort of the mental health piece around it, is also another important factor, I think.
It's so true. I've just noticed, in about the last 5 years, just this dramatic increase in parents telling me that their child is experiencing anxiety, Even with our little ones, like 5, 6 year olds, I'm hearing it from parents that there's a lot of anxiety, either with going to bed or with sleep or with just other things, like worried about the world or worried about their parents or, worried about what's going on, in their community. So it's tricky because that leads us as parents to want to fix everything for the child, right? And if they're feeling so anxious, I need to be there, I need to lay down with her, I have to do this for her, and so there is a mindset shift that has to happen for both the child and the parent. So how do you kind of coach your parents to get on board with this idea that, like, our goal is to provide our child with tools to learn how to both sleep well and deal with or cope with any of the anxiety that comes from that? It's not always easy.
I mean, that's kind of the crux of the work, right? It is that we're not always sleep training the child. We are working a lot with whole families because parents are the ones who are guiding this. And, I talk a lot in my consultations and in my sleep plans with families about I like to have really candid conversations about the experiences that they're having around it, like the frustrations and the fears and the, not really knowing how to do this. And actually, this is probably my favorite part of being a sleep consultant and doing this work, is that having a trusted guide in this process, someone to say, I have seen this before. I understand what's happening here. I have tools that I can teach you, that you can in turn teach your child, that are going to be effective, and helping to build the confidence to make those choices. Because as we've seen, I also work with many in families that have infants, and, a lot of times what happens is they will have dabbled in letting their child cry, or and then it doesn't work. This is not well. I 99% of the time I think it's because we don't have the confidence to really trust the process and follow through with the plan. So with a child in this age group, you're going to still see some protest because they're afraid, right? The kids are afraid. They don't believe it's going to work, and they know that you've tried 100 other things leading up to this point. So it's hard to have confidence in that process. But I think in working with a consultant, with a human being who understands, and I use Voxer with my clients, and I'm on the Voxer every day for 3 weeks with my families, talking to them about what's working, what isn't, and helping them understand how to then engage with their child around it. And also I do the Voxer with the kids, because they a lot of times really want to talk about their successes, but also their failures and what they're struggling with. So, I mean, really, as you can tell, I have a lot of words, so I just use a lot of words with my families, really talking through, like, let's get real about what's happening. How can I help you? And by witnessing, the experience, that's a lot of how I get through it with people.
That's great. Yeah, I think, it's really about, if you can give the parents the tools that they can then impart on their child about how do we cope with anxiety, what does our body need when we're preparing for sleep, what's the best way for sleep to come, how do we feel confident in our own abilities to get ourselves to sleep. I mean, again, this is a gift that they're giving their child that I believe will go into adulthood with them if they can learn to, regulate their system, calm themselves down, deal with anxiety in a really healthy way. Anxiety is just a given, right? Like, no one's getting out of this without some anxiety. Like, that's just part of the human experience. And so if we can start teaching our kids at a younger age to start noticing it, identifying it, finding coping skills and strategies that work well for them to deal with it, I mean, we're just setting them up for future success on top of the greatness that comes from a good night and a full night of sleep. So it's win-win on either side, I believe.
It's true. I totally agree. And I was just thinking about, like, specific ways that I work with fear and anxiety. I mean, there are lots of different techniques that you can use, but even just having, like, one nugget, right? For parents of like something to do different. So a lot of times kids want to start talking about the things that they are stressed about, either from their day or about going into the night, or, you know, if they have a nighttime fear or something like that, they want to start talking about it when? Right when we turn off the lights, right at bedtime, right when we are done. Like and it doesn't behoove anyone to be talking about these things at that point. So I like to have parents do either a worry box is usually my favorite one, but I like to have people during the day kind of carve out 10 minutes one-on-one with their child and say, you know what? I know you were kind of upset when we were going to bed last night, when you were going to bed, and you know, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what it is that you've been worrying about, you know, and I'm going to write everything down right here on this piece of paper. I'm going to put it into this box, and I'm going to put it up on this shelf. And then in the morning, if you're still worried about it, we're going to talk about it again, right? So that then when you're in the bedtime routine and the questions start to come and the fear starts to ramp up, then you can say, oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. Remember when we talked about it today? I have all that written down. It's in the worry box. We're going to talk about it in the morning. Right now, why don't you do some breathing with me, and let's get focused on whatever the tool is that we're using at that point. So,
yes,
you know, just even having, like, as a parent, one tool in your toolbox, you know, that you're able to use, instead of saying, kind of panicking at that point, right? And not really knowing how to deal with it. And then it ends up kind of, you know, spiraling down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, then the parent is frustrated, then the child's getting frustrated, and tensions are getting higher instead of the opposite, right?
Yeah.
Which is what we want.